I think I was the first person to have a big hit single, an album with electronic music. So it kind of needed that. It needed somebody to, to open the door, and then all of a sudden the public and the industry itself is interested. Now everybody wants their own electronic act, and like a floodgates get opened. Um, but you kind of, being at the early part of that sort of thing, you take quite a lot of the brunt of the reaction against it. So I had the musicians union tried to ban me because they said I was putting musicians out of work for some reason. I suppose because with a synthesizer you could, if you wanted to, make it sound like a violin. So I suppose they thought you're putting a violin player out of work. But we weren't coming up with sounds like a violin. That was the last thing we wanted. We were trying to create new sounds and do things that no other instrument or human being could make, with the technology. So I always thought that was a very silly argument, and a very poor reason to try to ban me. But they did very hard. They banned various members of my band. They banned the drummer for a bit, and because he made some minor indiscretion somewhere. Just pathetic, really pathetic. And then some of the music papers at the time tried to, I had a massive amount of problems with the press. It wasn't real music, and it wasn't this, and it wasn't that. Just, it's number one. I just sold 1 million copies of a single. And, at what point do you realise that you're out of touch, really? And that ordinary people in the street that have no in-depth knowledge of music that all these journalists are supposed to have are getting it and understanding it and enjoying it. And you're still sitting there with your acoustic guitar hanging off the wall thinking that that's what music is all about. It was pathetic, really. But eventually it all came around. But it took a lot of crap at the beginning, to be honest. Yeah, but I said at the time a lot that the keyboard is not a visual instrument at all. Um, so, but like I said before, I mean, it wasn't my idea to have just a bank of keyboards. So I still had a drummer. I had two dedicated keyboard players, each one with a whole load of gear. Then I had a drummer, and then a bass player. I would play some, but not much, maybe 2 or 3 songs. And I played guitar on some, but not much. So I was mainly at the front singing. And then I had another guitar player, and he would also play a little bit of keyboard. So um, essentially, a conventional band, got a big band actually, but with dedicated keyboard players who were quite prominent. But I was aware that they were not the most visual things. I used to stick them up in towers up in the air, and have the mobile people moving about down the front with me being at the front of all that. But it's one of the reasons I got into doing such massive light shows, especially in the early days, was because I was aware that there was an element of the band that just wasn't particularly visual, and I wanted to enhance that as much as possible by having not just some people moving around the front. I was aware of my own limitations as well. I didn't. It takes quite a while, I think, if you're not a natural showman, to learn how to do all that, and I knew I didn't have it at that point. So um, the great big light shows and making a feature of the keyboard players, but in a way that you were sort of highlighting the fact that they were static, but you build these great big, fantastic light shows around them, was drawing attention to the keyboards, but not relying on them in terms of a visual thing for the crowd. And I think it's the right way to go about it. To be honest, I still do. Up to a point, I suppose it is, but then again, you do have these big shows going on around you, so it does. There are moments where you can just look away from the front man, whoever it might be, and look at other things. And I think that's an important part of it. You should be able to do that, and there should be more to look at than just the front man. But I think it's always that human element that people are going to be drawn back to, and you need to have someone that is charismatic, especially in a synth-based band. There's quite a lot of rock bands around. They've got very dynamic guitar players and bass players, whatever it might be. Be at the front and giving it loads of shapes and just entertaining and looking really, really good. But when you don't have any of that, then that human element becomes almost entirely the singer, the front man. And yeah, it's a lot to carry. And the bigger you get, and the bigger the stage is, and the bigger the audience is, the harder it gets. There's a lot of space to cover, to put yourself in front of people and give them something to look at, and not be this little dot in the distance. It's a skill. I've seen Depeche many times, and Dave Garner's got it in spades. brilliant at it, brilliant.